content here is for informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests.
Welcome to our new podcast, Allottees Land Defenders. We are your co-hosts.
My name is Aslaya Campillo, and I'm from Spreaker District, and I'm currently a student at the University of Arizona studying veterinary science.
My name is Sonia Salwe. I am from San Xavier and currently a youth development specialist with the San Xavier Allottees Association.
So before we begin, we want to share a little bit about what this podcast is and what we will be talking about.
Allottees Land Defenders is a unique youth-led podcast designed to be an educational tool to share research of the land and water rights concerning all Allottees communities. This platform enables our vibrant Native youth to use their voices to educate, advocate, and discuss the complexities of indigenous rights, sovereignty, and stewardship of our lands and waters. We have a mixture of various topics tailored to the youth, from societal issues and musical explorations to educational affairs. We aim to engage, inform, and inspire young minds to become active members of their communities. Allottees Land Defenders traces the paths of our ancestors while carving the path for future generations.
With support from the San Xavier Allottees Association, their mission is to assist San Xavier Allottees to preserve and improve their land and to educate them on water rights, environmental protection, and economic development. For more information, visit sanxavierallottees.org. So today we want to discuss the Dawes Act, on what it is and how it affects us past and present. So the Dawes Act was also known as the General Allotment Act, and it was passed on February 8, 1887, and was named after its author, Henry Dawes, who at the time was a senator of Massachusetts.
The Dawes Act, as a part of assimilation, allowed the president to break up reservation land into small allotments that was to be given out to individuals of the tribe. The transcript of the act says, "To each head of a family, 1/4 of a section. To each single person over 18 years of age, 1/8 of a section. To each orphan child under 18 years, 1/8 of a section. And to each other single person under 18 years living or who may be born prior to the date of the order of the President, directing an allotment of the lands embraced in any reservation, 1/16 of a section."
However, some tribes were exempt from the law, including Cherokees, Creeks, Choctaws, Chickasaws, Seminoles, Osage, Miamis, Peorias, the Sacs and Foxes, who were known as the civilized tribes.
At the time, San Xavier was the only reservation established for the Tohono O'odham, and therefore it was the only reservation to receive land allotments.
In 1893, President Cleveland assigned the Dawes Commission to negotiate with the civilized tribes, and as a result, 7 acts were passed that allotted a share of common property to members of the tribe in exchange for getting rid of their tribal government and recognizing state and federal law.
In order to receive the land, members were to enroll with the Office of Indian Affairs, which was later renamed Bureau of Indian Affairs. Once enrolled, the members' names went on the Dawes Rolls. The Dawes Rolls were a list of names for the BIA and Secretary of the Interior to use in determining allotment eligibility.
Then, in 1934, the Dawes Act was revoked and reviewed as a failed attempt to deal with the quote-unquote Indian problem. After came another piece of federal legislation to deal with the impact of land separation.
In 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act, or IRA, was approved and seen as a way to stop further allotment of tribal lands. The purpose of the IRA was to promote self-determination among the tribes by allowing them to draft their own constitutions and govern themselves to a limited extent.
This shift in Indian policy was aimed to encourage economic development and a revival of so-called tribalism among the Indians, which came from 2 areas: President Roosevelt's New Deal and the growing tolerance and respect for traditional aspects of Indian culture.
However, the end of allotment did not stop the effect of interest in unclaimed land being passed through unfinished wills from generation to generation.
So I kind of found the inheritance part of this all very interesting because at the time, boarding schools were going on. So a lot of the children of Native families were being sent, to different parts of the state, I guess, area. States, yeah, to attend a boarding school and become more colonized. So they would learn English, they would start to learn English and abandon their Native American language. And this part of it kind of is interesting because part of the requirements to getting allotment was they needed to pick up agriculture and farming. So, and this was kind of bad when it was inherited because a lot of the children weren't able to, practice and learn the ways to continue on with this farming that the families started. And because of this, the land was eventually up for grabs for anyone who was non-native, so they could come in and kind of just take the land, what was for sale, because they weren't able to keep up with the farming, which I found very, very interesting.
Yeah. I did read somewhere that the Dawes Act was directly responsible for the loss of 90 million acres
Yeah, that's
of indigenous land.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny too, I read somewhere that along with the farming, especially not necessarily in Donna-O'odham land, but in other tribes that don't have a lot of desert areas, or have not used to the desert, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't used to that sort of environment to begin farming and stuff. And because of that, they didn't really want to take up, self-farming and self-agriculture. Yeah, okay, wait. So the land in many other areas, because there's a bunch of different tribes around the United States, and it's not like in the desert here. And because of that, the land that was given out or allotted for it in different tribes was desert areas or near desert lands. And therefore, they weren't able to keep up or to adapt to that sort of farming. And because of that, again, they kind of tricked, I was trying to find the word, tricked Native people into thinking if they can do this, it's easy land for grabs. But really, it's in a way not really, because they have to adapt to a whole different lifestyle and stuff like that. So
yeah, because it seemed to be benefiting the indigenous people, but it also reduced the amount of territory that everybody had.
A lot. So the title of the allotted land need to be entrusted to the United States for 25 years before the allottee could truly own the land. And you mentioned something before, you read off the act before about how much land each individual got. So how much acres or land did people of San Xavier get?
So in 1890, there were 292 allotments, which totaled at 41,622 acres of land. 1,580 acres were said to be under irrigation, while 6,440 more irrigable acres, which is just like land that could be used for farming, were covered with mesquite. So even though they could use it, they were full of mesquite trees.
So in 1890, on that day that the plots were being passed out, you didn't necessarily have to be of Autumn in order to receive land. You could be from other parts of the nation. So as long as you came, lined up, gave your name, you could receive a plot of land that day.
Also, when the allotment happened in San Xavier, it didn't really affect the Autumn because they just kind of continued with their way of living like they had before the government had given out the plots of land.
And I feel like this, and I guess my opinion, it could feel as if, based on our history that we know, we kind of already practiced agriculture and did crops and stuff like that prior to this. So, and we did it in the desert, which was, as stated before, the kind of land that was given out. And so I feel like it wasn't that hard of an adjustment to make in terms of picking up farming.
I do know that there are 1,800 landowners that own interest in the allotments of San Xavier. So we just kind of wanted to share that bit of information about the Dawes Act and how it affects the allottees, past and present, and a bit of how the association was created and how they help the allottees manage their land allotments, especially with will writing and passing it on to their next of kin. So for those of you who may still be a little bit confused on the exact definition of allottee and what it is.
So basically it's someone who receives a share of something that's been divided up. For example, if a piece of land is divided into smaller pieces and given to different people, each person who receives a piece is an allottee.
So Leia, are you an allottee?
I was a little bit confused at first, but talking with my grandma this past weekend, I found out I was.
You were saying it was in a Jimmy John's, right?
Yes, it was in the middle of a Jimmy John's. Middle of Jimmy John's, I was getting a little bit of a history lesson. So yeah, having talked to her, I found out that my great-great-great-grandmother received land from her father and her mother. And because she was an only child on her father's side, she received a lot more land with him than with her mother. I found it interesting because she was telling me, she was kind of joking because she has siblings. So is it in all of you guys' name that you guys have it? She was like, actually, it's all in my name because your grandmother saw the future, is what she said. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, because she kind of said that eventually, especially with multiple kids, as it gets passed on, the land gets passed on, it's eventually going to get so small to the point where it kind of like diminishes. And so she said to have everyone agree to put the land in one person's name, which was my grandma. So that's how it is right now. So all the land that her mother had given her is all in her name instead of it being divided up, which keeps the land kind of bigger and kind of gets rid of that problem of the land getting smaller and smaller. Yeah, she was a very smart woman. Yeah. So, Sonia, are you an Allottee?
I'm not totally sure. I talked with my dad, and he said that we do have land from my grandma. So I'm not sure. I have to talk to my grandma about it. So
interesting.
Something to look forward to.
So all of our youth who may not know if they're an Allottee, I recommend go talking to your elders.
Yeah. Talk to your elders.
You will surprise them. Ask them if they're an Allottee. It's good information to know.
Yeah. Just don't be suspicious about it.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Okay. So we also kind of just wanted to share a little bit more about ourselves and how we came to work on this podcast and how it started. So I guess I'll go first. If you can't recognize my voice, I'm Sonia.
In case you're following along.
If you remember the intro, I don't know. I actually started working here probably about a month ago, I want to say. And I was brought on as another youth development specialist, as well as a marketing assistant due to my previous job. I was working at another nonprofit. It was more towards the Yaqui. They were trying to incorporate the Allottees and other tribes from South Dakota. Also, another little interesting bit. I'm also part Oglala Lakota. I don't know much about that part of my family. I am trying to learn. There's not a lot on the internet. And the only information I can really get is from my dad. But yeah, I started working here my bad. I started working here about a month ago. I've really enjoyed my time here, and I'm very excited to be on this podcast and to start it with Leia, who I've actually known for a very, very, very long time.
Since kindergarten.
Too long. I kind of brought her on because I remember seeing her relative's name on the Allottee list.
Yeah, as the story I just told you that I found out.
Yeah. So I asked her, and she's also very interested in the community and how to help, because we kind of drifted going through high school, especially.
So yeah, I got asked to join this podcast with Sonia and assist her in all this stuff. And yeah, I am kind of interested in learning more about my history and how it relates to my family as well, because I have little knowledge of it all. And I'm learning as we go and learning about the land as well. So yeah, like I said, I'm a student. I'm a junior at the University of Arizona. I'm studying veterinary science. And, well, I don't know if that'll be useful here. But yeah, I'm part Thana-O'odham and I'm Navajo as well. So yeah, and I'm excited to see where this goes. So Sonia, how did you think to start this podcast?
Well, it actually wasn't really my idea. It had already been kind of thrown around before I even got here. They just kind of needed somebody to take on the project. And we're currently trying to get ready for our annual youth conference. And we kind of wanted to promote the youth conference and the association both at the same time, but we really didn't know how. So our thought was, or their thought, because this was before I came, their thought was to start a podcast or a radio show, just kind of something to get the word out and to have people listening, especially young Allottees who don't know much about it and don't even know that they own land, which is why we advise you to speak to your elders. Speak to them.
Speak to your elders.
Speak to your elders.
Learn from them.
Me personally, I'm most looking forward to just kind of seeing how far this takes us. I have been kind of interested in podcasts because, like, they're interesting.
Yeah.
You get to hear people talk and hear their opinions, their views, and just kind of like where they stand on things, their values, stuff like that. Yeah, I think this is really important, and I think it's going to be a